it's early October and I am just getting ready to plant a load of stuff out in the garden to take us through winter. Now, I could have started this a little bit earlier, but the reason that I haven't, and I've held off until now, is because we've had the most insane drought this summer. We're in East Anglia in the UK, which is one of the driest parts of the country anyway, but it's been crazy. I mean, literally since February, I think it was the last time we had any decent rain. And then all summer there was nothing. Literally, the rest of the country had forecasts of rainstorms and things, and we didn't even get drizzle. It's been insane. So we've ended up with soil like dust. So what I needed was for like a real decent soaking on the earth, just to really permeate down before I sow anything, because otherwise it's just a waste of time. I'm just going to sow stuff and it's not going to have anywhere to send its roots down to find water. Now, yeah, I can obviously water manually, but when you're talking about the size of the piece of land that we've got here, that is really a lot of sprinkler time. So I wanted to wait, because obviously it's autumn, it's the time of year, the seasons are changing. I had a good feeling that rain would be on the way. Last week we had a first really decent soaking, and finally, if you dig down a little bit in the soil, you find moisture, which is what I wanted. So it's now time to plant stuff out. It's a beautiful sunny day, but it's a little bit windy out there. So I'm sheltering in my one of the greenhouses so I can tell you about what I'm going to plant. So, no surprises, onions, garlic and shallots are all going in. If you're going to do sets, that is these. They are baby onions. Now's a great time to get them in. So they're like basically half grown, halfway there for you, and you just plant them and then they'll swell and be ready to pick about July next year. Now, although this isn't a crop that you're going to be eating over winter, October and into November is a great time to get them in. That's because they're going to grow their roots now. So the earlier you can get them in autumn or fall, it gives them more time to establish that root system before winter, where they will go dormant because of light levels, and then not a lot will happen. And then you'll start to see really early spring, if they've already established a decent set of roots, a little green shoot will start to appear, which is one of the first things you see in the garden. It's always a really, really great moment in spring. If you are shopping for onion sets online, you'll see that some are labelled autumn and some are labelled spring. If you add spring to your basket, spring varieties, they're not going to arrive until spring. So you might be sitting there waiting for the package to arrive. It's not coming. So make sure you're adding autumn varieties. Those are varieties that do really well overwintering. But the benefit is that if you don't manage to do it, don't panic, because there are spring varieties which do better when planted in spring. So you've still got time. It's all no panic gardening. So the other thing I've got is these, which are elephant garlic cloves. Now, elephant garlic, if you haven't come across it, is brilliant. It's a type of garlic that grows massive. I mean, really massive, like big fist size. Looks like giant garlic. It's actually more closely related to the leek, but it looks exactly like garlic. And if you struggle to grow big garlic cloves, this is a great one to go for, because you're guaranteed at least a half decent size. Now, these cloves are interesting because elephant garlic is quite expensive to buy in garden centres, I find, irritatingly so. Kind of at the moment looks like you kind of get about 6 cloves, so 6 of these for around £14, which is a lot of money. But these ones I found in a local deli being sold as elephant garlic for cooking. Now, there's no reason whatsoever that you can't plant these and they'll grow. You don't have to use them for cooking. And it's just a good way. It's not that every deli is going to stock them, but just keep an eye out as you're out and about for things like that. Things that maybe are being sold under a different banner in a different kind of shop, but are just as likely to grow. And I've got another one of those coming up later, which I'll share with you. Now, this is my little bit of fun experiment. I have found giant red sugar beet. So sugar beet is grown really widely, certainly through this area of the UK, but through a lot of the UK. We do produce our own sugar in this country, a lot of it from sugar beet. So it's obviously a beetroot relative. And it's not that tasty to eat in the way a beetroot is, but it's usually used either for making sugar or for fodder. Both of those things would be useful. So I'm going to sow a load of these giant red sugar beets and see what happens. Because if we can get a decent harvest off them, Mike and I are going to have a go at making our own sugar and see if that's possible. And then anything that's left over from that, we can use as a fodder crop for the animals, because animal feed is crazy expensive at the moment, just like human food is. So fodder, I'm always thinking of extra crops, not just to grow for us, but that can also feed the animals. So yeah, this will be an interesting little experiment, and I will share that with you as we go along. So my beds are quite wide. They're 2 meters in width. So this is what I use in order to plant out and not compress the soil. This is just one of the leftover gravel boards that we had from making the edges of the raised beds. And I just put it from one end to the other, and then I can walk over it. It also means you end up with really nice perfect spacing between your rows, if that's something that you care about, and very nice straight lines. So, but it is a nice little fix for not having compressed soil in the middle. Right, I'm going to put the shallots in down the front of this bed now. These are germor shallots. So the beauty of a shallot is you plant one, you get several, which is really quite satisfying. So it's not like the onion sets where you plant a very small onion and you get a bigger onion, which is good, but these are a bit more satisfying because they multiply. So I'm just pushing them into the ground far enough apart so they've got enough room to spread as they start to divide. So planting roughly 20 centimetres apart. And then some of them you can feel that although it's in one skin, it's actually 2 onions. You can feel the divide. So I'm just going to break them apart because there's no point in planting them together because both of these will divide. So we'll plant them separately and it just gives us even more. Okay, I'm going to fill this bed with garlic and I'm going to start with the elephant garlic. So I bought 3 packs of this garlic very excitedly when I found it in the deli for £4.50 each. So that means for the average current price of about 6 cloves of garlic, I've got 3 massive bundles that I think have about 12 in each. So that's a lot of garlic for not so much. Okay, so I've got all the onions, shallots and garlic in now. So it's time to plant these. Now, you saw that I planted most of my plug plants that I started a month and a half ago in the polytunnel. But these I have saved to plant outside. Now, these are all chicory or radicchio, depending on how you want to refer to it. Now, the reason I'm planting these outside rather than inside is because they react to temperature. So in the cold, they develop really, really bright coloured foliage. So we've got a deep, deep red one. I've got a kind of bright scarlet one, hopefully. And I've managed to get a hold of like a rose pink one. I've got high hopes for how pretty these are. And it's a fantastic leaf. It's can be quite bitter, but it's really nice to use in a lot of Italian cooking's nice. I've had amazing risotto with radicchio in. It's a really interesting leaf to work with and it's ridiculously cold hardy. In fact, it loves the cold. The more cold it gets, the brighter the colour, the better it tastes. So these are going outside in this bed. So no area of the plot is safe. I am on a mission to get something planted into every single bit of garden to make the most of all the growing area I've got. So this strip of the production garden behind me is where I am going to give the sugar beet a go, the giant red sugar beet. I've never grown sugar beet before. It's a total experiment. I have no idea how this is going to go, but I love trying new things. There's no reason not to have an experiment. And I feel like people get quite worried about trying things that they don't know anything about growing because it might not work. But all I would say is for the price of 1 packet of seeds, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. If nothing germinates or they germinate and they don't grow or we don't actually manage to get any roots to swell, it's just not the end of the world. However, I have learned something during the process. So there's always something to be gained by having a try. And yeah, it's really quite a lot of fun when it works. So as you can see, I've covered the newly sown sugar beet with a little bit of Enviromesh. So it's not horticultural fleece, which is what most people use, but it's a very, very fine hold netting, and it will do much the same job. So it'll give it a little bit of extra protection just while it's germinating. Also means the pigeons and rabbits can't get to my new plant babies. So any gaps I have left, I am planting winter wheat, and I've got bags and bags of it. So each one of these bags, I think, is a kilo. So I've got 3 kilos of winter wheat. Now I have found that getting small holding quantities of wheat is a real problem, or grains in general. You can get seed packets of it, and you can get farming quantities where you literally have to apply for a contract in order to grow it. Now obviously I am not going to do that. So I found it a real problem to get the wheat in the quantities that I need. And the solution that I've come up with is I've bought this. Now this is from Hobmadod's, which is a Suffolk-based company, and they do loads of UK-grown pulses and grains and things. It's fantastic. But they do raw wheat for milling. Now, this hasn't been treated in any way. I don't see any reason it can't grow. And this is what I was saying earlier about thinking a little bit laterally. And when you're out and about, just keep an eye out for things that you can potentially grow. Because for not very much money, I've been able to pick up 3 kilos of wheat, which is a great quantity for me. It's pretty much perfect. And I can sow this all the way through the garden. So wheat is obviously something that you have to grow in a certain quantity in order to make it worthwhile. There's no point in having one little raised bed of wheat, because the quantity that you're going to come up with eventually isn't going to be enough to actually mill for a decent amount of flour. And that is the plan with this crop, is that we will be able to mill it and ultimately make our own bread. Again, in this journey towards self-sufficiency, perfecting grain growing is quite an important one. Because we eat bread, we like bread. Mike's an awesome baker, so I need to provide him with something to bake with, and that's going to take quite a lot of wheat. So that's the plan. Any gaps in the garden, I will be chucking in this winter wheat. So obviously I don't have any of the machinery that's usually associated with growing wheat and sowing wheat. I don't have a seed drill, I don't have anything like that. So I have my own little technique for sowing grains, which is basically to liberally sprinkle them across the surface of the soil and then rake just the surface, just so the heavier grains fall beneath the surface. So that is how I sow my grains. So there we go. The garden is planted up for winter. So I am now as ready as I will ever be for growing food all the way through winter. So we've got lots of things stored. We've got pumpkins, beans and that kind of thing stored from summer. We've preserved tons, and now hopefully the stuff that I've done today will mean that we have fresh food through winter as well, which is exciting. So I hope you enjoyed my little video, my little update of what I've been up to today. If you have, please do subscribe. It really does help, and it means that we know that you are liking what we're doing and we can do more of it. I will have more videos to come. Thank you very much.